All right. So thank you all so much for being here tonight for this virtual artist talk for CBPA at UMass Dartmouth. So Chynna Monforte is here tonight to provide us insight onto developing projects for the web, UX design, and also starting your own entrepreneurial practice, so skills for small business owners. So we're so excited to have Chynna here tonight, and yeah, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me too. I am really excited to get started and a little bit nervous, but that's what's fun. I mean, I think we're all used to being on these Zoom calls now, so I'm gonna approach it as more of a workshop because I'm used to doing workshops. But yeah, let's hop in. If you have any issues seeing my screen, please let me know. And I'm gonna hop right in with a land acknowledgement. So I practice and work in Los Angeles, which is territory of the Tongva peoples, who are very much still alive and thriving today. And so the reason why we do a land acknowledgement is for that reason. There are indigenous and native communities that are still here and quite often overlooked and thus underserved. But I want to make sure that we're honoring and respecting the land. And I think Laura has her say too.
Yeah, so I also just wanted to acknowledge that this talk is being hosted by UMass Dartmouth, which is located in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts. And that land was previously habitated by the Wampanoag people.
Yeah, so if you are interested in learning more about these communities, there's native-land.ca. That's an online resource for those of us in California, or whose.land, which is another website you can check out.
Great. So I just wanted to go over the format of tonight quickly. So it'll be kind of a presentation that Chynna's giving first. There are also two interpreters on this call as well. They're doing American Sign Language translation. So if you want to, you could pin either one of those presenters while the presentation's happening as well. And then at the end of the talk, there'll be time for conversation and questions. You could either be writing those questions in the chat or raising your hand as well. So thank you so much, Chynna. Without further ado.
Thank you. So yeah, let's hop into this Zoom and let's get into it. Today, obviously, I'll be talking about myself a little bit, my background, a little bit about entrepreneurship, developing projects for the web, and yeah, like Laura said, we're gonna have a little bit of conversation and questions. Thank you for having me. So my name is Chynna Monforte. My pronouns are she, they. I was born in Alaska, actually, and raised in Los Angeles. But my parents are both Mexican and Guatemalan, so I like to say ni de aquí, ni de allá, ni de allá, ni de allá, because there's so many intersecting identities. And really to speak to that is to just be proud to be a woman of color entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, a lot of these online resources and kind of online communities, especially the design community that I was really learning from, there weren't many folks that I could identify with or relate to. So I proudly kind of center that and center my identity within my business. I also like to say that I'm an artist first and a designer second, just because of my background. But I hope that this talk kind of shares some, insightful wisdom, some perspective. I hope, folks are able to walk away with some knowledge and just really be a connection for everybody. So yeah. And I see that we're having issues with my screen. So let me try to refresh this, y'all. Thank you for your patience. Give me 1 second. Okay, can we see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So this is just my bio. Yeah, and to speak more about my practice as an artist, I've been featured in some galleries like Self-Help Graphics, Plaza de la Raza, Armory Center for the Arts, But now I've really pivoted and focused more on entrepreneurship. And now to get into my background a bit, um, like I said, I consider myself an artist first and a designer second, just because my career hasn't technically been linear. I don't have a BA in design, but I have tons of experience, all the way starting from high school when I started learning about photo and got certified with Adobe, learning Photoshop. And yeah, and I think, I wanted to also take this opportunity to speak a little bit about fear, pursuing a creative career, because I think that this is very common for folks and something that I went through. And so, actually, straight out of high school, I didn't even go into art school or anything creative. I started studying pharmacy tech and I worked at an inpatient pharmacy. And obviously learned, that wasn't really my path, but I also learned patience. I learned how to systematize things. So I don't regret that experience. And then, I decided to pivot and I went back to school, studied design and photo in a community college. Um, I did screen printing. I was working as a teaching artist at LACMA and self-help graphics. And and then last year, actually, I started to really focus on the freelance work that I was doing. And there was a bit of a mindset shift within me because of COVID. And honestly, I had to really focus on the digital work that I was providing. So, web design, graphic design, as opposed to all of these workshops previously, like at LACMA. And I was also working as a digital media content producer with Artworks LA, which is a nonprofit that serves underserved high school students. And so at some point, after focusing so much on my freelance work, it really started to pick up. And I couldn't handle both anymore. So that's when, I decided to start building this community around my business and go from there. That's really kind of the foundation of my business. Also, side note, I work on a very busy street. So if you hear cars or it gets loud, I'm sorry. And then here's just a slide of some of my photo work. You can see more of that at imachina.com. But I'm really into, connecting with my community and really reflecting the culture, particularly through portraits. So here's a sample of that. Now we'll get into entrepreneurship. So firstly, if you're considering being an entrepreneur, yes, it's a lot of work, but there are really three main things that I think are important. First is your portfolio, second is the process, and the third is pricing. So obviously, if you are a student already, you know how important your portfolio is. It's really going to speak to your skill and your craft. And you can start building out your portfolio in school through assignments, or if you're not in school, you could even offer doing websites for family or friends. Just reach out to your community. You really want to have something online that folks can see. And then you want to start working on your process. So by process, I mean, how many revisions will you allow when you work with a client? Do you provide mock-ups? How do you onboard clients? How will you guide them? You really want to refine this. And nothing's perfect at first, but this is really going to help clients understand the value in the services that you provide. Um, time yourself and work on a project and figure out how long does a project take you? And then folks will know, hey, this might be 2 weeks, this might be a couple months. Do you like working with multiple clients at the same time? That's another thing to think about. Really refine that workflow. And then we get into pricing. So if you're considering web design as a career choice, Web designers make anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 per project, really depending on who your clientele is. Obviously, you could even add UX design as a separate service. And working with an agency will be a little bit different than working freelance or as a solopreneur. So if you're working with an agency, they have their own particular clients. They usually work, you'll be on salary with benefits. But here in California, I think the average is about 70K per year as a salary. So it's a pretty good career choice if you're looking at cost of living, and you are not required to have a degree, but you are required to have a really strong portfolio. And I would say, again, that is really key. Any questions about this?
I do. I have a question.
Yes.
For the less knowledgeable, can you describe what UX means?
Sure. So there's UX and there's UI. So UX is user experience, UI is user interface. User experience, let's see, how can I best talk about this? So, you know how when you go on Facebook and maybe your experience isn't that great on Facebook because there's just too much going on. Well, there's always somebody working on that. So, UX could be thinking about like how many comments can you see at a time, or just the layout of everything. But there's always somebody making that choice within all these platforms that we're interfacing with.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to keep moving along. Now, getting started as an entrepreneur. Of course, you're going to set up your business, so you can decide if you want to set up an LLC, which is a limited liability company, or if you want to work as a sole proprietor. This is going to come into play when you're thinking about taxes, when you're thinking about how you're protected, and then you're going to think about which platform you want to work on. So I particularly work with Squarespace, mostly because my clientele, they really need something that's easy for them to maintain and edit. But, everyone's different. You have to find what works for you. Other platforms could be Webflow, WordPress. There's even like Wix. But also I like Squarespace because it's really secure and they have customer support, which is cool. Thirdly is booking projects. So we're going to talk a little bit about soft skills versus hard skills. We're going to talk about finding your niche, because that's a bit important when you think about who your ideal clients are. In my case, I work a lot with nonprofits, I work with creatives, I work with small businesses. And when I'm working on branding and really my messaging to those clients, like I said, everything down to which platform I work with is really important. So when you're working on your own branding, it's not just logo and font and everything pretty. I mean, that's obviously the very fun part as designers that we get to work with, but also the strategy. What is your messaging? Who are you? Who do you serve? Who is that community? What do they need from you? That's really going to help when you find your niche. And once you have all of that ready to go, then you can really focus on social media, your website presence, your portfolio. Again, instilling that trust in folks so that they can work with you. So yeah, building those relationships is really key. Now, to talk a little bit about soft skills first, I think as an entrepreneur, we really have to be very driven and motivated, especially if you are someone who is starting your own business from the ground up and you may not have startup money. It could mean late nights sometimes, or Googling what you need to know, really being interested in that research and having a desire to learn and grow and refine your craft. Constantly working on that. If you're someone that needs to be pushed and needs a schedule, being an entrepreneur means that you set that up for yourself, which can be hard for some folks, but it could also be really fun. So that's one of my favorite parts about being an entrepreneur and working just with web design is, I could technically travel, and obviously post COVID, but I could travel and work from anywhere. And as long as I have my process intact, then I'm good. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about self-doubt and imposter syndrome as an entrepreneur, because many entrepreneurs and many creatives experience imposter syndrome. And, it's important to know that you're not alone and it doesn't make you lesser than, and just keep pushing. Drop a line in the comment if you've ever had imposter syndrome, because I think this is actually a lot more common than we talk about. And yeah, so to transition into a bit more of the UX and developing for the web, I really want to highlight these two programs, Adobe XD and Figma, which are both free. You can see some of the website mockups that I've worked on here on the screen. What's your favorite UX program? I'm curious to know for for students in here and for folks that work with web design. I think Adobe XD I prefer over Figma, but I don't know, we can nerd out about that later. So on the left, we have Figma, and on the right, we have Adobe XD. I would say if you know the Adobe suite, then Adobe XD will be super easy to learn. And it's awesome because, it's not only for mockups and web layouts, but you can also use it to make social media graphics, social media templates. So it's super easy to use. And Creative Cloud actually is awesome because you can save your color palettes, you can save your fonts. I personally really love it. Figma is also great. It's web-based, or you can download it. And so this is an example of the Compton Girls Club website. They actually provided some of the branding because this was a client that really loved branding and having fun with graphics online. So this is an example of that. Any questions about these programs?
Yeah, I have a quick question. How would you compare, I don't know if you've used Sketch a lot, but how would you compare maybe Figma and Sketch? Because those are the two names that I pretty much see for the most part when it comes to job listings and, skills that you would need to have for this kind of thing. So
I don't have that much experience with Sketch, but I do know that it is super similar to Figma. Honestly, as long as you know how to export all of your assets, that's going to be the most important part. I find that a lot of folks, they just want you to know how to use various programs. But the majority of them are interchangeable. So if I'm saving PNGs, I can always import them across any platform.
Okay.
Sorry, I hope that's helpful.
Oh yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. So yeah, any questions for me in terms of entrepreneurship or maybe programs, or even maybe ask me any questions you have related to career path?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, what is sort of your any tips for dealing with miscommunication with clients?
That is a great question. I think over time, you definitely learn where there could be weak points in terms of where that miscommunication can happen. The way that I kind of handle that is whenever I'm onboarding a client, I provide like a welcome kit. And it's basically a digital brochure that goes over, you know, what are my working hours? How do you get in touch with me? How do you provide feedback? I think like talking about providing feedback is huge for clients because a lot of folks just aren't used to it. So as a designer, a lot of like communication between clients is also education. So you might have to educate your client on how to provide feedback, how to use Google Drive even. Like there's a lot of it is this educational component. So as a designer, you're kind of, you can be an expert in some areas, but it's really good if you're a jack of all trades so that you are able to guide folks through your process. Yeah, but yeah, I would recommend a welcome kit. I don't know if that helps or if you want to kind
That's
of.
super helpful because I'm trying to figure out how to do that for myself. So, and I never thought about that. I was like, I need to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a welcome kit, it's like, you know, you can make a PDF. I use this program called Honeybook, and you are able to kind of build out forms within Honeybook. So it helps my clients stay organized. They can log in, they can see proposals, they can see invoices. Yeah, but yeah, that's my big tip.
I have a question about okay. Thank you for doing this talk again. I wanted to ask you about marketing and how you market yourselves, and also like what do you do outside of like social media to kind of get the word out about your services?
That's a great question. So actually prior to this year, I invested in a social media manager and she's awesome. I think she's still here. She helps with social, but prior to that, all of my clients were word of mouth. And honestly, building that kind of relationship with your clients, like the big thing is you want to work with clients that that you want to work with, right? So taking on clients that could even potentially be friends, it will really help you establish that relationship with them. Obviously, that's not going to be the case with every client, but once you have that relationship, I would say even, you know, sending a thank you gift after your project, reaching out later if they hit a milestone, you know, just like always offering yourself as a resource. What else have I done? I've sent emails that ask for like, that ask for testimonials. Testimonials are huge, especially when you think about lead generation on your website. Testimonials are going to give folks that that trust in you, especially if maybe they love your work, but they don't know if they want to work with you or what your style is. A testimonial is super important.
Well, thank you so much, Chynna. Love your glasses.
Thank you.
Looks like there's a question in the chat about how to get your name out there. Is it through social media? Are there other ways that you kind of increase your audience?
Yeah, I think even to speak a little bit more about that in terms of social is very important because like we are just not living in a time where, you know, we're posting businesses in the newspaper or you know, even TV is different. Just the consumption of media is different. So social media is going to give you a platform for free, and it's going to give you a platform to connect with folks. So I would say social media is actually, it's super important. Also check out Clubhouse. If you have an iPhone, Clubhouse has been kind of a different take on social media that I think is very interesting, but it will establish yourself as an expert in your field. And that will also help, again, kind of distinguish that value that you provide, your expertise, and all of that. Is it better to do LLC or DBA? I love this question, and I will get into it. So an LLC is great to have, but if you are first starting your business, you may not need an LLC right away. Especially in California, it can be extremely costly. So depending, really like evaluate how much money you're bringing in, how much revenue you're bringing in, if you're losing money. If you have to pay for an LLC over time and you can't afford it, it's just not worth it. So a DBA is a great place to start. Once you're kind of established and you have that revenue and you're comfortable, then an LLC will provide more protection.
One question I had, just because so many people that are on the call tonight are like very new to web development, sort of like students of web development, just kind of getting their first start with it all. So what do you recommend for people that are kind of just getting, other than, you know, sort of some of the stuff you went over in your presentation as far as like portfolio development and like growing your network, like what are some of like those kind of like need to knows for like new web developers?
I would say it's a great question. Honestly, you don't have to know everything right off the bat. That's a huge piece of advice that I wish I heard way earlier is you don't need to know everything right off the bat. You can offer your services to folks and maybe pare down a bit. But if you're first getting started, like the important thing is that you get started, you know, just put yourself out there. You can always learn from the process and refine things as you go along, but you can't wait to start a business. There's never the right moment, you know? So my big advice is you don't have to know everything, actually. Don't be afraid to get started and kind of learn as you go, but at the same time, protect yourself. So always have a contract. That's number one, always have a contract. Always set your boundaries with clients. Again, what are your working hours? Can they call you at 10 p.m.? Maybe, maybe not. Are you available weekends? Know your boundaries, know what your workflow is. Again, I think finding that process where you're able to guide folks through and, you know, have things like the welcome kit, have onboarding, have offboarding. You want to be an asset to your clients, right? So you want to be a good resource. I always factor in 2 weeks to every project after we offboard, and I make sure that I'm able to help them with any questions, any troubleshooting, anything like that. To get into UI UX as a career, is it necessary to be really good at coding? No, actually, surprisingly, no. And that may not be what Laura wants to tell folks as a professor, but you have developers and you have designers, and some folks do both. Obviously, you're going to be more valuable, especially to like an agency, if you have more of those skills, but ultimately, no, you don't. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think that makes sense. I mean, even the class that I teach at UMass Dartmouth, web typography, like, yeah, coding is part of it, but it's also like user testing is part of it. And, you know, like it's so kind of multi-pronged. So like, I do think of coding as like one part of it, but at the end of the day, it's not like everything, you know? So.
Yeah, I think at the very least, you should have familiarity so that you know, when you're working with other people, you know what you're talking about, and you know, there's a working relationship there. But you don't have to be an expert at coding. Yeah, LLC is 500 per year. So in California, it's 800. That gives you an idea.
Looks like there was another question from the chat about what important pages to have on your website or client websites too.
I love this. I think it depends what kind of business you are. So if you're a creative, obviously have your portfolio. That's very important. Have a way that folks can contact you. And if you are a creative, often it's good to have separate pages for maybe different, for example, if you're a photographer, what kind of photo do you offer? Do you do fashion photography? Do you do portraiture? Have different pages on those different styles. If you're a service-based business, then obviously like a homepage and about page to really like let folks know who you are, who you serve. A services page that outlines your packages, or you know, maybe you don't have packages, maybe you just have inquiries, a contact page. Those are standard. If you're building an e-commerce website, obviously you're gonna have your shop page. A lot of folks like to see different collections. So let's say you're working with a candle company and they have, I don't know, let's say they have floral scents, and then they have like, I don't know, tropical scents, like offer different collections for customers that may be looking for one specific thing. And to get into like a little bit of the legal, you always want to have a privacy policy if you're taking information on your website, like newsletter sign up or even your contact form. And you always want to have terms and conditions.
Nice. Any more questions from the group?
I have like one more question. It said you like do a lot of work with nonprofits. What is like your best practices with negotiating pricing and services with nonprofits, whether you like donate a service or you work within a limited budget? How do you figure that out?
I love this question because it took me so long to really figure this out. But I had some great advice from a business coach, and particularly because again, working with nonprofits, they might have a limited budget. But my best advice is if you are not limiting yourself in terms of pricing throughout the year on various types of projects. Let's say I take on a client that can afford a $10,000 project. If I take on that client and I do that $10,000 project, maybe the following month I may have capacity to work with a nonprofit that maybe can only pay $500 for their website. It kind of allows for, I don't want to call it like a sliding scale, because in a sense it's kind of a sliding scale, but it provides equity for different types of projects. That's my biggest advice, is don't limit your pricing, but if you can, then work with folks that have a limited budget by kind of supplementing your income with other projects. But at the same time, I guess I want to expand on that too. I think early on as a designer, I wasn't as confident in my skills. And so I was also underpricing pretty severely. And that really only did a disservice to the market as a whole. So I would say a standard is like 2,000 at the lowest. I also offer pricing plans. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm booked out months in advance now. So if someone wants to take on a project, let's say in August, they'll have a few months to break up those payments.
Cool. Like, what was kind of like, do you had like milestones in your like journey to figure out like, okay, I'm not charging enough for this, I need to boost my prices up? Like, what points do you realize, oh, I need to increase my rates? Like, is it when like there's a mistake and you might have like fucked up, or is it just like, no, I know my worth now? How do you determine that?
I think there's both. It's like over time, you're going to build up your skill and refine that skill. No matter if you're an expert or not, I think there's always something to learn and grow from, like whether it's a new platform or even just, you know, in terms of creating graphics or whatever it is, like you're always going to level up your skill. So there's that. Two is if you're just way too booked, something's wrong. Like you're going to burn out, and it might be because your prices are too accessible, which is sad to say, but like we live in capitalism, right? So supply and demand. If there's too much of a demand, your prices may need to go up. For me particularly, I think there was a huge moment for me when it was self-confidence, and just knowing, and actually it was that business coach that told me, hey, like you're severely underpricing yourself. I think I was making websites for like $500 and I was putting in so many hours. I mean, like, especially working with a nonprofit, you're doing things like developing donor databases, you're integrating those on the website. That takes time, that takes testing. It's a lot of also knowledge that goes into it. So I was severely underpricing, and honestly, I think it was a confidence issue. So it may take time to get there, but also knowing the market, right? In California, particularly, like cost of living is really high. And if you're working with an agency, I mean, I know how much they make. Why shouldn't I be able to match that? I mean, I have to think about expenses too, right? So like software, you know, these computers are expensive, these MacBooks are expensive, rent is expensive, I have to pay for my own healthcare. It's so, you know, you kind of start to add all of these things as factors.
Can I ask one more question? I don't want to hog all the questions.
Yeah,
but like what tools do you use for invoicing? I find the biggest struggle is chasing people for your payments. And like some people I understand aren't intentional about it, but like you have to kind of pester people about it. What do you use to get like for invoicing and to get your payment on time?
Oh man, yeah. Oh, I think every designer can really relate to that, having to chase at that check. It's so annoying. Not just designers, but creatives, like in general.
I'm trying to charge myself or like pay myself for chasing the payment. Like I'm trying to add it into my rate.
Yes. Firstly, I have like a clause in my contract that says if you are late on payments, there's going to be a fee. If you're delaying the project over 5 days, there's going to be a fee. If you cancel the project outright, there's going to be a fee. So that it protects me, but it also encourages the client to work to find a solution with me. And then the tool that I use is Honeybook. I'll type it in the chat. And I like Honeybook. Unfortunately, takes huge transaction fees, but they offer auto pay. So if your client agrees to auto pay, it'll automatically deduct it from their account. They don't have to worry about sending a check. They don't have to worry about going into a payment portal. And it also integrates with QuickBooks. QuickBooks is another one that you can send invoices through and get payments online, but I don't think they have auto pay. Their transaction fees are slightly smaller also. Yeah, don't waste my time, respectfully. Professionally.
Any other questions out there for Chynna, either in the chat or unmuted? I'm looking down at my notebook because I feel like I have like so many lists of questions, but I also want to be mindful of other people getting a chance to speak up. One thing I did want to ask a little bit, to go back to something I mentioned earlier, is this idea of like user testing, which I noticed you even do a little bit on your own Instagram. Like you'll make like a post of like, this is updated, like go check it out. Let me know your thoughts. Like here's a poll. Do you have advice for people of like, you know, sort of this test early, test often, like how to get user feedback on projects and how to have that inform the design process?
Yeah. So part of my design process is always a revision round, which it doesn't just give the client the chance to offer feedback on the design, but it also gives a chance for us to test everything. So that's like one area that I've actually factored into the timeline. I would also say just sharing. Sharing is huge. You know, nothing has to be perfect, especially websites. They're always changing. I mean, literally before this Zoom call, I redid my entire website and launched last night. And it might not be perfect. It's not perfect for sure. Like I want my portfolio to be a little more robust, but it's there. And that's what's important. I mean, especially on the internet, I mean, our attention span is so small that if you need to update your website, it's fine. Someone is going to see the updated version. It doesn't need to be perfect. Always test, always change things. Be fluid. Yeah. That's my big thing. Be fluid.
I just put your URL too in the chat if people want to check it out. And then one other thing I wanted to say, I noticed that you have a part of your site that is essentially like a link in bio or like a link tree that like people can click in from your social media, and it just like very kind of organized, has everything stacked that people might want to click. Do you suggest people create their own version of that for their own portfolio sites? Like, have you found that to be really helpful for you?
Yeah, actually the first reason why I did that was because there was a time when Linktree went down. And I remember everybody was freaking out because their link in bio was not working. So if you can, one, it's like the security, it's going to be on your own site. Secondly is it'll have your branding on it. You don't have to pay Linktree to have like the branded version of their platform. So yeah, I would definitely recommend just build out a page on your site, you know, make sure it has a really short URL. And yeah, this is what I put in my Instagram bio, TikTok bio, Facebook, any socials. I make sure that they're always linked at the top as well. That way, let's say someone's on TikTok, they can find my Instagram there too. And it's just a bunch of buttons.
And then because you're doing this with like Squarespace too, you get all the metrics of like what people are clicking on and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
So students, take note, maybe develop a part of your own portfolio site that has almost like a riff off of Linktree, but like, you know, you can put your own motion graphic at the top, have all your socials right there, and then have all of the sort of traffic places that people might be heading to. I think this is really clever. I really loved when I saw that you kind of took it off of Linktree's platform and brought it to your own, because I feel like there's a lot of benefits of it being on your own. Some, you know, that you can do like more custom stylization, motion, interaction, and also be able to collect all those metrics. It's really smart.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. And I mean, if you can save money by not paying for Linktree, it's like, who wants to pay for Linktree? It's another platform. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen again. Any questions? Don't be shy.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's more like a general question, but I'll be graduating by the end of the year. So what would you say is like good advice like for a starter career, like where is the best place to start off if you want to get into UI and UX design?
That is a great question. I think it depends where you're, like, where do you want to work? What
I
kind of,
was like thinking of, I don't know, like finding some kind of agency to start in.
yeah, what kind of work environment do you like?
I don't know, I can't really say.
I think that's a big question because agencies are amazing and successful and stable mostly, but at the same time, they're very fast paced. They're often long hours. If you really thrive in that type of environment, I say go for an agency. If you like something that's maybe a bit slower, or you want to kind of have more set working hours, consider maybe like a nonprofit. Yeah, I would really say think about your lifestyle first. I think often we're looking at careers for the money, but we don't end up happy. So think about what kind of lifestyle you want to have. I know that's not very helpful.
No, I definitely understand what you mean.
Yeah, and yeah, you could even go into art direction. That's an opportunity, like another good avenue. As long as your soft skills are especially refined, your leadership, and if you know how to guide a team, that's another avenue.
Thank you.
I think we wanted to keep this right around an hour. So I think maybe we have time for maybe one more question if it's floating out there, and then we can kind of wrap up relatively soon.
Yeah, I'm going to share this screen also. So time's out. Yeah, thank you for joining. I want to give an opportunity really quick before we wrap up. Thank you everybody for being in the chat, for showing love. I do have a lot of other ways to connect and ways to kind of stay involved with what I'm doing. Particularly this month is really busy. So tomorrow I will be on Clubhouse, the app, at 9 a.m. my time, 12 p.m. your time. We're going to be talking about web design, like optimizing your web design for leads. And then that might be kind of short. And then March 1st, there will be a poster workshop on Zoom with the Social Impact Center. The Social Impact Center is a hub for organizers and activists. I think they also strive for cannabis justice. The founder was formerly incarcerated and started this amazing nonprofit. And so they're going to have me present a poster workshop for the beginning of Women's History Month. March 10th, there will be a zine workshop also on Zoom with Flatline Gallery. That's an artist-led gallery here in California, based in Long Beach. I will be talking a bit about InDesign in that workshop. And then March 19th, we'll have a 3-day website build with the Compton Girls Club. They're another nonprofit. I just did their website, but they're dedicated to uplifting girls, femmes, non-binary youth in Compton. I do believe that workshop's going to be just for youth. But yeah, and if you'd like to connect, definitely add me on Instagram, social media. If you have any other questions, I always want to make myself available as a resource. So this is my email, reach out. Even if you want to work together, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Great. Thank you so much, Chynna. That is amazing. And it's so cool to see all the stuff you have going on in the near future as well. I want to check some of those things out. So
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be busy. And hopefully in April, I will just chill out a bit.
yeah, thanks so much for spending time with us today and kind of walking us through your workflow. And yeah, CVPA at UMass Dartmouth is super grateful for your time and your presentation. So thanks so much. Thanks to everyone that came.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet everybody here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
be posting up the recording. I'll send it to the same email addresses that people use to register. So if you want to watch it again.
Thank you.
Nice. That was great, Chynna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our interpreters as well. That was amazing to have that accessibility.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi,
Cool.
Mom.
Thank you for coming. That's so cool, Mom and Dad on the call. I love it. That's awesome.
Aw,
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye,
Bye,
Chynna. I'm going to reach out to you and ask for your mailing address because I want to send you like a physical thing in the mail. So
Cool.
thank you so much. This was really great. And I know the students just like so appreciate hearing different perspectives, and it's, as an institution, it's very like career focused. So I feel like this is like great insight into, you know, chances are a lot of them will run their own businesses or be kind of entrepreneurial. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well.
All
Nice.
right, we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye.